your own personal Jesus. Hello, and welcome to the next episode of Matt and Todd Go to the Movies, the podcast where Matt and Todd go see a movie at our local Regal Cinema Theater, and then we talk about it in the parking lot in Matt's Xterra, and you, the public, listen to it, and hopefully it pleases your ear holes. I am Todd Domer.
And I'm Matt Malloy, and yes, we're back for another exciting episode here outside the theater. We just saw a movie called Infidel.
Infidel!
Yes. And this movie, well, I didn't know what to expect going into it.
I knew, when you said, let's see this movie, I knew nothing about it. And then I thought about looking it up and watching the trailer, and I was like, no, let's just let it ride.
Go in blind.
Yeah.
So, as far as I know, there's no one famous in this movie except for Jim Caviezel.
Old Jesus Christ himself, Jim Caviezel.
Yes. And that comes into play, as you alluded to in your Depeche Mode cover of Personal Jesus. There is some Jesus in this movie, as well as some Islam. And by and large, those two things are on opposite sides of the conflict in this movie.
Yes.
So, what is the movie actually about? Well, Jim Caviezel's character, who I forget his character's name, Bob. Doug. It is Doug, yeah. He basically, well, the whole first part of the movie, I think, doesn't even matter to the plot, really.
Yeah.
There's a subplot with him and like a coworker that doesn't really go anywhere and barely ties in later. So I won't even cover that except to tell you that it's there. The movie really gets going where he's like a software guy, I guess. He works for a software company, but on the side he has a blog, and he's a famous Christian blogger. And he gets invited to go to Egypt, where he does go to Egypt, and he does an interview, and is on like live television throughout the Middle East for some reason, and ends up talking about Jesus and makes many people angry because of that, even though he was invited there to basically do that. And from there, he gets kidnapped by some radical
people.
Yeah. I want to say like militia, terrorist type organization.
There's a word for it, but I already can't remember.
Hezbollah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he gets taken to, I guess, Lebanon, and then later he gets taken to Iran. I'll say it correctly. And then his wife gets involved. She works for the State Department, and she ends up finding out that he's in Iran and goes to Iran. And the rest of the movie is like trying to get him out of being captured. And that's what it's about, really.
Pretty much, yeah. Covered it.
So, what did you think of this movie, Todd?
This movie's not that good.
Yeah.
It's definitely not the worst movie I've ever seen. Certainly not the worst movie we've ever reviewed on this podcast.
Right.
But it's a mess of a movie. Like I told you after the movie, I was like, it's the greatest made-for-TV movie you'll see in the theaters. Like, it's just... there's so many bad things to point out about this movie. Like, the acting is not that great. I mean, I do think Jim Caviezel's a good actor, and I think in parts of this movie he's okay, but there are other parts where you can't understand what he's saying because he's speaking so softly, like, and it's so low, and he's supposed to be, like, angry and, like, almost yelling, but he's so soft. You can't understand what he's saying. Like, and it's just... other than that, I mean, besides Jim Caviezel, everyone else in the movie is not good. Like, there's just not that. His wife, the woman who plays his wife, is really bad, I feel. And the story is like, I don't know, like the story doesn't make sense. Like, and I don't want to go into too much detail because it could involve spoilers, I guess. I mean, I don't know if anyone's planning on seeing this movie, but it's definitely I mean, I believe I can't say for certain, but it feels like one of those Christian movies made for Christians, like faith is tested and all this kind of stuff. But it's like it's obviously made by people who haven't made many movies. Like action scenes are bad, sound effects are horrible. Like there's like parts of the movie where like gunshots are happening and stuff like that, and it sounds like a cartoon effect. And it just was very distracting and bad. So, like, there's not much good to say about this movie. I guess if you're a Christian and you believe in Jesus, this could be a movie that's like, yeah, inspire your faith kind of thing. But I don't even think it does that very well because I am a Christian who believes in Jesus, and I don't feel inspired as I leave the movie. I feel like I wasted my time. So, yeah. There's really not much else to say on my part. It says it's based on actual events, which probably at some point in Iran, a Christian was jailed for being a Christian. And that's that's probably the basis of like this story. We're going to say it's based on actual events. So here's this happened to one person one time, but we're going to build this other grand story around it, which is probably what happens for most movies that are based on actual events. So it wasn't that good. Like, do you need to see it in theaters? No. Do you need to see it personally and not in theaters? Then that's up to you. I'm going to leave it in your capable hands, listeners, of whether or not you want to go down this road. Again, not the worst movie we've ever reviewed, but certainly not that great. Matt?
Well, it's always interesting to go into a movie with sort of no expectations. Sometimes that can really boost the movie up, and sometimes it doesn't help at all. This movie, I came in, I had no expectations, I had no knowledge of what the movie was about. And so when you're in that mode, like some of the fun is trying to kind of figure out where the plot's going, and like what are the twists and turns going to be of the movie. And for a while, it had me sort of interested. I was like, okay, this was interesting. All right, here's some new characters. Here's some stuff going down. All right, you're showing me some stuff. And then, like I said, the first part of the movie doesn't matter almost at all. So throw out that interesting part of understanding the movie. And then the rest of it is just like, it really slows down towards the end.
It really does.
I thought they did, like, I feel like you have to be careful in today's world when you're going to portray Christianity, when you're going to portray Muslim faith, Islam. And I thought for probably the first 3/4 of the movie, they did a nice, even job of, like, not painting either one as super good or super bad until it got to the end.
Yeah.
And then it was like, the Christian is the superhero and all Muslims are bad.
Right.
Which is a big turnoff.
Yeah.
Regardless of what your faith is, I feel like in today's world you need to handle things a little bit more delicately when it comes to portraying people's faiths. And I feel like also having the white male Christian character be like the hero who is the one who shows compassion in the end,
sure,
is not really that great in what's happening in the world today.
Sure.
Also, randomly, they throw in COVID near the
They
end.
really do. It's like one line.
It was so strange. It was like, I don't know when this movie's set. It doesn't matter.
It really
It's
doesn't.
like,
And then all of a sudden,
whatever.
hey, COVID's spreading throughout the jail.
Oh,
That's
yes,
it. That's
COVID.
it. And then nothing else is mentioned about it. We're going to
So-
make this movie relevant to what's happening right now.
So this could be the first movie that mentions COVID.
Yeah. I mean, certainly that we've seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
that's an interesting little
That has to
tidbit.
be like the movie was done and they
They
went
were
back
like,
in and
"Oh,
just
yeah."
recorded one line to throw out.
Right.
That's
Oh,
amazing.
man. Well, other than that, definitely agree with you. This movie wasn't great. It wasn't absolutely terrible. I mean, there was like some plot structure and some how are they like wondering how are they going to get out of this? We think they're going to get out of it,
Sure.
but how's the conflict going to be resolved? That was somewhat interesting.
Well,
But-
I would even argue that the first 15 minutes that they just kind of throw away was more interesting to me than the rest of the movie, where like it's like Jim Caviezel's friend and coworker who they've gotten him and his family, all the families have gotten tight. The daughter goes missing, and when the daughter goes missing, police come to search your house or whatever, and in the house they find that he's got a lot of paraphernalia that's like radical Islam, like that is
Right.
very much on every authority's watch list or whatever, and like then it's just not talked about till the end of the movie, and you're like, that was more interesting to me than most of what happened in the movie. That I was like, why
Right.
didn't we explore these things of like. So anyway, and the daughter goes missing. It was, like that could have been the whole movie to me. Like was just, and then you just find out that these two friends are trying to work together, and then one could be evil, one could not be. Like you just had a whole bunch of options. I feel like from that start of the movie
Right.
that they did not explore at all.
Could have made a whole different movie from the beginning part there.
Could have made a movie I actually liked.
Yeah. Well, there you have it.
Yeah.
So, who should see this movie? I don't know.
Radical right-wing people who already hate Muslims, probably.
Yeah, they'd probably get a little bit of a kick out of it.
Yeah.
But aside from that, no one's really gonna have a great time with this. It's a little
Right.
too jumbled. The plot's too jumbled
Yeah. Yeah.
to
Not good.
really be something great. So, all right.
So, Matt, how many underhand lobbed hand grenades would you give this movie, which was just the wimpiest way to throw a hand grenade to me that
Yeah.
Jim Caviezel does at one point, was just like, what the heck? He just pulled out the floater from Rookie of the Year to save the day.
Yeah. Not great. Okay, but on a scale from 0 to 5 of the underhand grenade tosses, I'm gonna give it 1.9.
Okay.
So, not quite in the average range, but somewhat in the bad range, but near the high end of bad.
Yeah.
I'll
I
say
think-
that.
I think at the start of us talking about it, I was probably close to where you at, but I've talked myself down by thinking about a whole nother movie in my mind that they could have been that's way more interesting to me. So I'm going to go 1.5. I
Okay.
think is where I'm going to land on that one. Lobbed hand grenades from Jim Caviezel.
Yes.
I hope everyone out there who's listening loves my Rookie of the Year reference.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to wrap up this episode of Matt and Todd Go to the Movies, where we spend our night watching Infidel. And we collectively rate it 1.7 underhand lobbed hand grenades out of 5, which is not a good score. And probably means you can skip this one unless you are a Muslim hater.
Yeah. Then it might be high on your list.
You might
But
like it.
It's also probably the last time we're going to see Jim Caviezel again until Passion of the Christ 2.
Right.
So which I believe
So,
is being made.
I guess Jim Caviezel's only taking Christian roles.
I mean,
Strong Christian
seems
roles
like it.
at this point. So, well, anyway, thank you for listening to our podcast. We'll keep making them, and you keep on listening, and it'll all work out.
Da da da
Da
da
da
da da da.
da da da.